That's Ruby Valley, Louie, Hollywood. Where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good. Where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Tonight's very special episode of Damn You Hollywood, as we discuss the worst of the worst of the worst things in the entire universe, is brought to you by the famed law offices of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. And here, joining us on this particular podcast, we have all three named partners. To my on the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you see Dewey, because he do. Upper left-hand corner is Mr. Cheatham. He spells it with a K, but we like him anyway. And I'm Howe, as in how much longer is Mark going to let this stupid bit go on? How long before my webcam craps out? And how in the world did we all wind up here together? None of these questions have answers. Film at 11.
Hang on. Hang on. That was fucking impressive, man. That was All right, good night, everybody. I don't know.
I've got.
Fuck it. No, we're done.
I got two other bad gags. I figure I needed to get at least one that I knew would land.
Well, we hope to see more of your gagging later on in the show.
I got more puns than I had lined up for our Defenders review when I went on about the hand.
That's fantastic. Hey, why don't
you
we
throw this many Cenobites at me with this much creature design? I'm gonna find bad gags to make. You just wait. But on a more serious note,
I honestly would love to hear you gag more often.
I'm sure you would.
Hey, we have a guest with us tonight. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, joining us for the first time in quite some time, but one of the founding members of what eventually blossomed into the Radulich Broadcasting Network. So feel free to blame him as much as anyone else. Sean Comer. Sean, how the heck are you?
Hey, that's Sean Comer. You're not. I'll have you know.
That's your gag. I don't want to step on it.
That's his gag. How many? Everyone, the Radulich Broadcasting drinking game tonight is every time we say gag, take a drink, and then call us with your bill for the hospital.
You can, in fact, overdose on water.
Hey, Sean, this is the first time you and me have rock and rolled since Pride Month, where we went to we did some LGBTQI movie reviews for the month of June for Pride Month. So a bunch of triple features, one Damn You Hollywood. And then I was like, yeah, I'm not podcasting anymore. Bye. And Sean's like, what the fuck, man? So I'm glad you're back. Missed you, buddy.
No, glad to be back. I have not done a podcast with both of you two in an age and far, far too long. And I mean, over the summer, I kind of took some time off too. I needed to, because summer went absolutely, oh fucking God, everything is on fire off the rails.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh, no. But of course, I remembered that there was no way on God's green earth that you two were not going to be doing Hellraiser. And thusly, there was no way on God's green earth that I was not going to be on the Hellraiser podcast. So Robert, I look forward to kind of disagreeing with you on some level or another about
that's
the
fair
design.
So my issue is not that it's bad. It's if you give me this many, I'm gonna find them.
So Sean and I started the Long Road to Ruin, which was our franchise review, and then what would happen with that was almost immediately Robert or somebody else would want to guest. And then at that time, I wasn't podcasting as consistently as I do now. So I would take like a month-long hiatus, or I don't know, have a kid and be like, yeah, deuces, I take over. And Robert was always my go-to replacement host. As he likes to say, he is the permanently on deck man. So there are just as many Long Road to Ruins with Sean and I as there are with Robert and Sean. But the other thing that made Robert...
To be fair,
yeah.
Robert was also in case Sean wants to do a horror franchise.
I was just getting to that.
emergency device.
At least 50% of the Long Road to Ruins were horror franchises because it was like you guys. So it was the Hellraiser. We did the two. You guys, I didn't say we. I ain't a part of that shit. You guys did the 2-part Hellraiser review, franchise review. You guys did Nightmare on Elm Street.
Everybody say hi to my fiance in the background.
Hi. We did Scream. We did. I don't know. Robert, were you on the 2-part Paranormal Activity one?
Yep.
Okay, you were on that one.
Oh yeah. That was my first, actually.
Okay. Yeah, we did a bunch, especially in the beginning. That first year was like loaded with horror franchises for one reason or another.
Sean and I did Saw. I believe you and I, Mark, did Final Destination.
Yep.
Because I remember that one specifically because the memory came up on Facebook the other day of the title card that Ben drew, and it's you and me in the Mousetrap game. It's great.
We did. I know we did Jaws.
Speaking of.
Yes, sir.
It was the Hellraiser podcast that first brought friend of the show, Benjamin J. Cologne.
Was that the first one he appeared on? Yeah.
He heard it, and that's when he reached out.
Okay.
Yeah, because on the second episode, I got the bright idea that I was going to throw out there that if anybody would mind doing some pro bono work making title cards for us, we would certainly be interested. His
title cards are still up on my wall. The Dark Knight, Batman the Animated Series, and Transformers. And I have the Evil Dead in my bedroom. But I also have the title card that he made. Hang on.
I was waiting.
Thank you. Anyway. I kid. So anywho. So yeah, we used to have, because of the format for Blog Talk Radio, we used to have a call-in show, and Ben would call in, Jesse would call in, Jeff would call in, Sean's best friend Jeff Harris.
Be nice.
I am being nice. A lot of eye rolling on this episode. Anyway, I want to start off.
We haven't even got to the movie yet.
Yeah. Hey, tonight's movie we're reviewing, Hellraiser, the 2022 remake. Real quick. It's an American supernatural horror film directed by David Bruckner. More on him in a moment. With a screenplay by Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski. With a screen story they co-wrote with David S. Goyer. A second adaptation of the 1986.
That explains so much of it.
Yeah, buddy. A second adaptation of the 1986 novella, The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, which served as the basis for the 1987 film Hellraiser. It is a reboot of the titular franchise and the 11th installment overall. It was co-produced by Spyglass Media and a bunch of other ones, and it stars a bunch of actors no one's ever heard of, but they do have Wikipedia pages, so that's something. And as most lawyers will tell me, Wikipedia is a perfectly serviceable place to get information, and it is always factual. Wow.
There's a reason it is not an acceptable source when writing anything. For the record.
Don't tell my lawyer girlfriend that. God damn it. That is my major. That's the major source of the information I used to argue with her, and then she wants to throw it all out all the time, and I'm like, why? Wikipedia seems accurate.
You can use it as a big mine of other sources, as long as you go and peruse the references. But no, citing Wikipedia has been the downfall of far too many dumb shit high school and college students.
As someone who has written research papers that had to be formatted properly, I was told more than once Wikipedia is not a valid source.
I believe it can be referenced in a legal brief. Anyway, speaking of which,
that explains your legal history so much.
Anywho, I have not watched any of the Hellraiser movies. What I know about the Hellraiser franchise, I learned from listening to YouTube people scream about it for 4 hours. However, I did watch it the Friday that it came out on Hulu, and I told her about it, and she's seen all the Hellraiser movies and was a big fan. She was like, "Oh my God, there's a new Hellraiser! I didn't even know." So she watched it, and I feel like this is a great place to talk about this franchise and this movie for just a moment before we get into the plot. This fan of the Hellraiser franchise noped out after 20 minutes. She was like,
see that.
I'm tapping. I'm done. And for me,
really?
I remember.
I can see why. If I were to hazard a guess, it's because after the initial kind of meeting of hey, what's up? We dovetail into kind of a very like David Fincher 7 aesthetic for about half an hour to 40 minutes. And it's very incongruous with the rest of what's going on in the movie. So I can understand being off-put by it. I wasn't, but I can understand it.
So here's what I'm going to say, and I want to throw it to Sean here. Thinking about your 2-part retrospective on the Hellraiser franchise, just about the original 1987 film, you guys talked about how graphic it was and she used the word disturbing. You guys talked about how graphic and how truly horrifying it really was. And having watched this movie, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the craft review, it has the same problem to one degree or another that the Firestarter remake has, and that a lot of modern horror is that, and this echoes something that we've talked about on recent podcasts. We're remaking stuff without realizing why it was popular in the first place, and we're playing the notes, but we're not getting the feel. We're not getting the rhythm right. We made this thing based on what we think people like, but we don't really understand the material we're remaking, and so it comes across as kind of an empty, shallow cover. What do you think, Sean?
Hang on, I think I missed part of that because we all of a sudden started having some connection issues, and all of a sudden you guys got real laggy.
Okay. I was asking, compared to the Hellraiser franchise, especially the first one, what were your expectations, I guess, and how did it measure up?
Okay. Well, first of all, I didn't come in expecting anything to live up to the first 2 movies. Nothing at this point was going to do that. I would sum up the franchise as being, at this point after this movie, 4.5 good movies and a metric pant load of what the ever-loving fuck I can't even.
What was the one in the second retrospective where you guys were like, "This is the worst thing ever," and it was the whole review?
Let's all
Revelations.
It is, but Sean, I don't know if I should be grateful for this or not. I'm going to choose to be grateful that you and I did not have to try and shoehorn in talking about Judgment on that retrospective, because that's a whole 2 hours of screaming in and of itself. Revelations would have been the last one.
Do I hear it on trial in the future? Sorry, go ahead.
I've spent a long time over the last 6 years working on my anger management, on trying to rein in and vanquish my nerd rage. Hellraiser Judgment, because this franchise is second probably only to Nightmare on Elm Street among my favorites, threatened to set me back a good 2 years at least.
Oh God!
How much it fucking pissed me off. It was nothing less than something that was rushed out the door so that someone could hold on to the movie rights. So when we talk about what I was, go on.
I was going to say, let me tell you how much Judgment sucks. Here's your pitch for Judgment. It's the worst slash fiction of Seven and Hellraiser. That's all that movie is.
You keep bringing up Seven, and here's my question: is there a reason why people who, 30-odd years later, are trying to remake Hellraiser and keep looking at Seven as inspiration? Is there a connection I'm missing?
Not that I'm aware of, other than sort of general artistic overlap.
I don't know.
But please stop. Please stop.
Right.
Here's the thing. I want to examine this for just a moment. Because Seven's in like the zeitgeist, but not to the point where anyone in 2022 or 2021's like, what is the quintessential thing that we need to be inspired by? Fucking Seven. Like, I can name like 10 other horror movies that you would draw inspiration from and would like inspire you in your remaking of Hellraiser, and Seven's not one of them.
I guess. Give me 1 second. I'm going to duck out and then come back in, see if maybe that fixes the lag.
Okay. Go ahead, Robert. What were you going to say?
Yeah, this is getting unconscionable.
Okay. Let me sum up a large part of the reaction to this film from what I've seen online.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, you've been in pain.
Emotional, spiritual, physical.
Any and all.
Which one are we talking about?
Any and all of the above. I've been in pain. Have you ever been in pain for so long that simply having it go away is such an incredible relief that you don't even want to feel good? Like you're just happy not to be in pain?
Sure.
That's what this movie is for fans of this franchise. It's not painful.
Yeah, I get you.
It is the removal of a chronic, mind-numbing pain that has sat in your nervous system for years and years, and you finally get it to go away, and you don't even feel good. You just don't feel bad, and not feeling bad after feeling bad for so long is cause for the biggest celebration you can imagine. That's my summation of this movie and the reaction to it as a general rule. It's fine. Here's my spoiler for the review. It's fine. I have gripes. I have things that I'm going to praise. But fans of this franchise have waded through so much crap for so long that getting something sort of benignly competent is a relief.
All right. I'm going to give you the last word on this introductory piece, Sean, and then we're going to get into the plot synopsis. I started this, and I know you were having, and I'm not sure you were having like connection issues, but I was basically saying that like listening to you guys talk about how disturbing the first one was and watching this one, this just feels like a misread of what was so great about the first one and someone kind of just doing a pale imitation.
Okay, and before we kind of went off the rails, you were asking me about my expectations, and
Yes.
This is kind of what I was trying to get at.
Yes.
I don't look at this as being a remake.
Okay.
I don't look at this as being a reboot. I look at it as a fresh start for these characters, for the Cenobites anyway, for the universe and the premise. Because there's no reference to the Cottons in this movie. Nothing about that. The other movies are not even referenced at all.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it's a reboot. It's not a remake. The only things it really has to do with the original concept, the movie or the novella that it's based on, are the Cenobites and the box. And even then, they chose to go in a slightly different direction with the rules of that story. So I came in not expecting a continuation of the franchise at all.
Mm-hmm.
I did not come in. In fact, I deliberately, I had initially planned on, I was going to listen to the audio, to the recording of the Hellbound Heart again. I was going to watch the first movie again, and then I was going to watch this one. And then I called kind of my own audible and decided to nix watching the first movie because I didn't want to come in comparing this movie to the first one. I wanted to judge it on its own merits. At the most I wanted to do was I wanted to see how closely it hewed to the spirit of the Hellbound Heart, which I genuinely think it did. I genuinely think it remained fairly true throughout. If you were expecting Doug Bradley's Pinhead, sorry, Charlie, you're not going to get it. If you're expecting a final girl that is going to stand up to Ashley Lawrence, who deserves to be in a class alongside Heather Langenkamp and Jamie Lee Curtis among the great final girls of all time, bad fucking news. That's not what this character is supposed to be. That's not what you're going to get. And newsflash, the Kirsty Cotton that we got in the first movie, in the first two movies, is a pretty goddamn big departure from what Clive Barker wrote in the Hellbound Heart. She's just about a polar fucking opposite. In the Hellbound Heart, for one thing, Kirsty is not a Cotton at all. That was a change for the movie. And Second, there wasn't a whole lot of boldness about her. She was a mousy, irritating little thing that the narration is mostly pretty spiteful towards, actually, throughout most of it. So, if you're looking to make those comparisons, well, okay, be fair and at least note how much the first movie diverted from the source material.
Yeah.
This one, again, it sticks to that spirit and honors it, but it does so in a different way. And yeah, it's also not going to be a lot like the first two Hellraisers because this was made in a different era. Everything about it, the personalities, the writing, the dialogue, the kind of the contemporary culture of it. It's not going to be like a movie made in the 1980s. Unless you're making a deliberate period piece in the year of our holy, oh God, it's all on fire clusterfuck 2022, your movie based circa 2022 probably should not feel like an 80s movie because that's just kind of jarring. But I came in knowing it was going to be different, but just glad that this was going to be probably Clive Barker's one last really fresh start to do his creation justice. And I'm happy to say that, well, yes, I'll probably agree, at least in part, with some of Robert's criticisms. I came away from it overall pretty impressed, but I would say this is one of those rare times I don't want a movie to get a sequel. I want this to just kind of be the final note, because I believe it would send the entire franchise, the entire legacy out on a fairly strong one. This is a
Robert.
good one to go out on. Just leave it alone.
Agreed. I feel like I say that about a lot of movies. For God's sake, just leave them alone. Robert, plot synopsis me, baby.
All right, so we open with the acquisition of the puzzle box, the Laurent box, the Lamed configuration. It's in a different configuration when we first get it. It is acquired by wealthy. Right, this guy's made a career out of playing either just off nasty billionaires or incredibly sympathetic European doctors. If you're not familiar with the career of Goran Višnjić, that's basically what he does. He's one of those two things. And God bless him, he's good at it. He has acquired this box and he wishes to use it because people only get the box who want to use it. It's one of the things. He tricks some poor schmuck into cutting himself on it, and he winds up yanked apart in the background via chain hooks as he entreats the Cenobites or some unseen power at the moment for a boon. This immediately sets up the stakes for a following morality play. We flash forward 6 years, not knowing exactly what happened, and we meet our cast of... Let me get out ahead of this particular criticism because I had a little bit of a back and forth with one of my editors at 411 Mania about this. He said, you people don't understand what it means to have deliberately unlikable characters and then try to throw unlikable characters as a criticism. And I think that's fair. A character that's supposed to be likable that is unlikable that's a fair thing to criticize. Deliberately unlikable characters are doing their job. Our unlikable cast of characters, which is a long way to get to that point. Our primary protagonist is Riley, a recovering drug addict, alcoholic, or what have you. Her brother, Matt's boyfriend, Colin, Riley's boyfriend / sponsor, something. They're connected via recovery process somehow. Trevor, and the here to be cannon fodder other person,
and playing the pig hostage named Nora.
Nora, yeah. Riley is, again, she's recovering. Her life's kind of a mess. She's trying to figure out what to do with her life, trying to get things back on track. Trevor offers her a position on a heist he's pulling on a long abandoned container that's just hanging out in a warehouse. She agrees because, of course she does, or the movie can't happen. It also makes sense. If I say it because the movie has to happen, there's other times when I think that's a legitimate criticism, not here. They break into this container. They find a safe, which they open by hitting it with a sledgehammer. And I swear this is the only time I'm going to say this about this. That doesn't work that way. If your very expensive safe can be opened via any moron with a sledgehammer, you've got a real problem. But they open it and they find within it the puzzle box. They were hoping for cash or drugs or something else that they could make money off of. They take it because, well, we've come all this way, we ain't leaving empty-handed. They escape, and Riley starts fiddling around with it. Eventually, she gets high around this time and has a big fight with her brother. She starts fiddling around with the box. Her brother comes in to find her on an abandoned playground in an urban wasteland. And guys, if Candyman has taught you nothing else, playgrounds in abandoned urban wastelands are just bad. Don't do it.
Especially if you see kids singing by like a swing set, 1, 2, that sort of thing.
Yeah, just don't do it. This is one of those things. Like, if you ever think you're in an alternate universe, never go to Antarctica. Just don't do it. Just don't go to the deserted playgrounds. Just don't do it. But he shows up, and she opened the next configuration of the puzzle box, which brings out a knife, but it won't actually switch until someone cuts them and they get a blood offering. He accidentally stabs himself with the box because he doesn't know not to. She starts seeing the Cenobites because he's the one who cut himself. They arrive and take him. She doesn't know what happened to him, so the cops get involved. He's now a missing person. No one knows what's going on. She fiddles around with the box some more, argues with the various people in her life. They take it to find an old lawyer of our rich billionaire, whose name was Roland Voigt. And this is your David Goyer influence. The naming conventions in this movie are straight David Goyer because, hey, what's a rich white guy name? Here's David Goyer to give us Roland Voigt. Roland Voigt.
Yeah, I believe Scrooge McDuck was already taken.
Yes. Scrooge had a much more successful interaction with the Cenobites. I'm fairly certain.
Scrooge was like, I'll fight you all because I'm Scottish and I'm mean.
Please take Daffy.
Yes.
I've got what happened to Uncle Donald?
I've got these nephews, you see, and no one really likes them.
The fucking Cenobite like dragging Donald away, and he's like,
Not the first cartoon reference, not the last cartoon reference I'm going to be making.
No, sorry. Now I can't get the picture of like Donald with like the fight cloud of dust and the Cenobites like dragging him.
Your next killer in Dead by Daylight, Scrooge McDuck.
Well, I do. You know what? I do now want to badly see Magica the Spell go to war with the Cenobites.
That would be something. That would be something. So they take it back to her. She winds up cutting herself on it when the next configuration opens. In this instance, I'm going to assume it's purely because the movie has to happen, because that's one of the times when just the author's hand is very obvious. She gets taken by the Cenobites. The thing changes shape again. Ultimately, Riley decides she has to go to the abandoned Voight mansion because they might find some clue there. So they go there. There's a little bit of a chase sequence that happens. Nora gets stabbed with it by an unseen party that winds up being Mr. Voight with just the most horrifying of fates assigned to him. I mean that as someone who had dealt with a lot of nerve pain not that long ago, I sincerely felt bad for that poor guy.
You have to admit that was a nice touch, and that was something this story really did well.
It did, and my only gripe is, it must have cost him another arm and a leg to get all of his suits retailored. Because he's got more than one that he's able to don. So Nora winds up sacrificed. We all wind up back at the mansion yet again after a decent enough chase sequence. We wind up back at the mansion. The Cenobites appear. They trick Riley into stabbing herself, but because we need Riley to still be alive, they then use this as leverage to don't throw the box away, don't cover it in concrete and dump it in the ocean. You must use it. And if you don't use it, we're going to take you. But you, because you're special, because you have plot armor, and we all know it, and this was a bad bit of writing. It just was. Sorry. They're attacked by the Cenobites. Riley stabs the Chitterer with it, and Pinhead goes, yeah, I guess that works. because we know who we want to survive this, and it wasn't any of the two people who were immediately available.
Rules is rules, and you got to think the Pinhead kind of appreciates the hustle.
Fair enough. They all wind up with one more configuration to go, more or less. They wind up back in the mansion, which also has a giant metal structure placed over it that, when activated, functions like the box does, actually. It will magically keep things out or trap them in. This is where we meet Voight and find out his fate, which was he asked them to grant him sensation that he'd not yet felt because he's a rich guy who gave into hedonism. So give me something new. They threw a giant device through his body that attached to his nervous system, and at random intervals would play them like a harpsichord.
That's got to be different.
And I'm just going to throw this out there. For those of you who may not remember this, a couple of years ago, I wound up in a really bad place for a lot of podcasts because I was in constant pain due to basically an exposed nerve and desperately needing a root canal. Nerve pain sucks.
Yeah, buddy.
So I feel bad for this guy. Like, I genuinely understand his motivation here to manipulate everything. He then reveals that he'd paid Trevor off to, if you didn't see this one coming, I don't know what to tell you. The bloodline's going to turn on Sami Zayn. Shock. He manipulated Trevor into setting all of this up because he needs to get the device to the last configuration. When the last configuration is arrived at, Leviathan shows up and will grant you a boon. And he just wants this damn thing off of his body. So he's able to achieve the final configuration, and he says, please take it away. After trying, he tries to bribe them. He says, I have trapped you all in my trap. So tell your god that all of you are going to be stuck here if he doesn't take this away. And you know what? Thumbs up. Solid plan, bad guy. Genuinely solid plan, actually. I gave him kudos for that. Around this time, our nice gay boyfriend is being menaced by Whisperer. And poor Riley is trapped in a slightly different room. She winds up escaping. And Pinhead comes down and talks to our poor rich guy and says, you can't unring a bell. You can't unbreak something. You crossed a threshold. I can't put you back the way you were, as he's begging for death. But I can give you something else instead, if that's fair. Maybe you don't need sensation. Maybe you want one of the other potential offerings. One of the other offerings being resurrection. And this is Riley's motivation. She wants her brother back, and they'll give me back. We'll resurrect my brother. Thankfully, she learns by the end. And he goes, you know what? As long as there's not this thing again, playing my nerves like a harpsichord, I just don't need my little Mads Mikkelsen Hannibal in here strumming on my nervous system. Please stop. They take it out and say, well, we'll give you power instead. And they wind up turning him into a Cenobite, because what else would they consider power to be? As Riley saves Colin, our nice gay boy, by stabbing Trevor, and he's the one who winds up strangled and partially degloved by Whisper. She now is going to be granted her boon, though, because she's completed the configuration as well. So Pinhead and the remaining Cenobites are like, yeah, we're not leaving. We have to give you something. Them's the rules. And would you like your brother back? We can give you, that's one of the things. You can have the Lazarus configuration. We can offer you knowledge. And I shudder at what kind of knowledge would be offered. Me, because that's what would tempt me. Like, hey, you can tell me things. And she, having learned, one person in this godforsaken movie learned something by the end of it. She says, no, I don't want anything from you. And Pinhead goes, okay, I can't give you nothing because you can't actually get something from nothing. You get to live with the knowledge that you killed all these people and your brother's dead, and everything you've seen, everything you've done, all the trauma gives you nothing. Enjoy that. And then
can you imagine if she had gone for knowledge and
eyes like, bleeding.
oh no, I'm thinking more along the lines of, have you ever wondered what's really in the Subway tuna? Now you know.
Given this movie's obsession with Seven, she might finally find out what's in the box.
What's on the box? What's on the box?
The
box.
So she is left with the knowledge that this all meant nothing. Good on you. And then for some reason, Pinhead decides to quote Cowboy Bebop, and you're going to carry that weight.
See, I thought they were going to go with The Simpsons and let us never speak of the shortcut again.
Would have been okay. She leaves with Colin, who should be bleeding out by the time they even reach the highway. But one of our last things is Colin tells Riley, you made the right choice, right? And this is meant to be some like big questioning moment about, did she make the right decision? Yes. This is a morality tale. There's no ambiguity here. If this is supposed to be a character moment, sorry, you needed either better writing or a slightly better actress for that moment. And then the last thing we see is Roland Voight being turned into some Cenobite of unknown. We never see the full what he turns into completely, but he is transformed into a Cenobite. And movie ends. Again, like my general. Let me give you my 2 cents before we get into specifics. If I'm going to rank this film in the Hellraiser pantheon, my general 1 and 2 for me occupy, like, which one is the better of the two is largely based on how I'm feeling at the moment. They're different. They're very different movies, but they're I can't choose between them other than at the moment I want something more claustrophobic, or at the moment I want something a bit more grandiose. That's all it comes down to. Mm-hmm. I tend to rank Inferno as the third best, personally. Then you get into 3, and
I don't know. Can I make kind of one counter argument?
Yeah.
The first half to 2/3 of Hellraiser 3 is actually really fucking good.
If it wasn't for the ending.
It's just that fucking third act where Pinhead all of a sudden becomes mid-franchise Freddy Krueger.
If we have the appropriate ending, it's number 3. As it stands, it winds up number 4 for me behind Inferno, again, kind of as a general rule.
All right.
I would put this on par. I put this one about on par with Hellseekers / Deader. So we're in the upper mid tier of the franchise. Personally, it's better than Bloodline. It's better than it's a damn sight better than Hell World or Revelations or Judgment.
I'm gonna jump in here because I can already see where this is going. This is what I wanted to not avoid, because I want you guys to have the interaction in the back and forth and comparison and contrast, but I don't really have a role to play in that. I haven't seen any of these movies. So let me get my 50 words or less in there, and then I'm going to sit between you two, be the meat in your sandwich. Mm-hmm. Because I got to make it all weird. That's right. That's right, buddy.
Mark, I say this before. If you had half the follow through that you pretend you do, we would have an OnlyFans version of this that streams.
Writing that down. All right. I got trips I got to pay for, so a damn you Hollywood OnlyFans. I mean, whatever. We could talk. I want to talk about the director for 1 second. He did The Ritual in 2017. The Night.
For the record, hang on. For the record, if you have not seen The Ritual and you enjoy a combination of folk horror and creature horror, really good movie. It's on Netflix, I believe. It's really good. Gets the creature part of it right. It has one of the better original movie monsters I've seen in quite some time. It's real. Got a good atmosphere. The guy knows what he's doing with horror, so The Ritual's good.
Okay, he directed a segment of The Signal called Crazy in Love. He did something called Talk Show in 2011. These are short films. He did An Amateur Night, which is a segment of VHS, and The Accident, which was a segment of Southbound. And then again, Ritual in the Night House.
Really?
Yeah.
I forgot he did The Accident. If you haven't seen Southbound, it's an anthology series that is people trapped in hell and not necessarily knowing it.
So this is yet another
stories.
This is yet another.
Thank you, Joseph Lee, for your consistent recommendations when you would write A Bloody Good Time. For the record,
this is yet another example of them, of a bigger company with a streaming service and wanting to create content for that streaming service, but knowing that these things are not going to make money. These things are a part of an offering to get people to sign up for a subscription service, and you never know what's going to attract or retain somebody on that service. So you just kind of throw an array of stuff out there. you license some stuff, you create some stuff, and you hope for the best. But you can't spend an arm and a leg on your Roland Emmerichs, your Steven Spielbergs. You can't do what Netflix does, which is here's your $200 million flyer. Sometimes you got to keep this on a small budget, which means hiring lesser known directors or niche directors, art house directors, etc. And I think that was the case here. It sounds like from what you're saying, he's a fairly competent horror director.
Yes.
So I don't want to bash the guy for this. I think my issue with this movie, one, I don't have the sentimental attachment to it that you guys do. I've never seen the originals. I'm not a fan of this franchise. So I kind of watched this as just a horror movie. And for me, I had a hard time separating your enthusiasm for this franchise. From what I was getting on screen, because I'm watching this for the first time and I'm only watching this iteration of it and going, I don't understand what all the excitement's about. Now I can think back. I can think back to the podcast, remember things that were said, but that only makes me think this didn't really live up to that. I felt like for me watching this, it was the characters were kind of drab and uninteresting. Like even down to the costuming, like there was, it was literally like what just grab something off the rack in the costume department. Like there was no one had a style, no one had an aesthetic. It just like people just kind of almost like walked in from a cattle call and was like, here, read lines of dialogue. Nobody about this movie, no character in this movie outside of maybe the ones that play the Cenobites, and that might just be a costuming thing, costume and makeup. Nobody in the human cast has a particular look or anything interesting about them. They just seem like drab people. And our lead, God bless her, is trying her best. Odessa A'zion. I mean, see my comment about the director. It's when you're trying to keep your budget low, you're not paying for A-list actors here. And it's not that she's a bad actress. She's just kind of there. And that is my biggest issue with the whole Hellraiser movie, was divorced of everything else I know about this franchise and just watching it as it is. I'm like, it's okay. I was getting some not Seven but Saw vibes from it, and not because of traps or anything like that, but more because when we've talked about the Saw franchise, we talked about it being a murder mystery. It just happens to have gross traps in it.
The better entries in that franchise, yeah.
Yeah, and here this is a mystery of what does this box do and why is it killing people and how do I get my brother back? So the plot is there. The motivations are there. That's all solid. I'm just not that interested in the people. And then you got more out of the interactions with the Cenobites than I did. I found a lot of it to be sort of droning on, and I don't know. I had a hard time, and maybe it was the time of day that I watched this and the other stuff I had going on around me, but I was not particularly interested in a lot of the interactions with the Cenobites. I remember my experience watching it was I would kind of key in during the kills because I was waiting for it to be gross, and it's not even that. Like, I remember your guys' description of the dismembering of whoever gets dismembered in the first part of Hellraiser with the chains and the hooks and everything. Yeah. And it's a rough watch just from your guys' description. And me, big sissy pansy, who doesn't want to watch that kind of thing, but I was waiting for it here. Like, that's what Hellraiser is known for. And it doesn't rise to that level. That's what I mean by, like, this feels like they didn't really understand why the people are attracted to this series. I think it focuses a little too much on, and it's weird that I would say this because I'm usually the guy going, no, give me more of this sort of thing. But I felt like it focused a little too much on the morality play and not enough on the gore. And so the whole film feels out of balance for me. And it just feels like, if you would go to the video store in 1992 and you just go into the horror section and pull 2 or 3 off the rack and you're like, these are CB average horror movies, but these were fun for a Friday night watch on the VCR. Nothing memorable, just kind of there, and go about the rest of my day. So I'm going to pitch it over to you, Sean. You seem like you have some thoughts here, but I was not particularly impressed with this iteration of Hellraiser.
For the record, if this was your first time watching if this is your first Hellraiser film, I think that's fair, and I don't think you'd really get what's so intriguing about the best of this franchise from this movie.
And
like, you might get the spirit of it, but you wouldn't get it's weird because like you can see the DNA, but you are missing a little bit of like kind of the magic that really brings it to life.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's stealing in terms of themes like temptation, but I didn't really get a lot of that out of this. It seems like there's like a punishment for sin kind of an aspect to it, but again, like it sort of touches on that, but not really this version. I just, go ahead, Sean. I'm gonna shut up and let you jump in here. Or Robert.
And he'll be back in a second, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let me wait for Sean. Let me very briefly say this. There's big parts of this movie that are a love letter to this IP.
All right. Sorry, this seems to be the most consistent way to stabilize my connection is for me to just kind of duck out and come back in every now and then.
That works. Mark TG
right.
up. Go ahead.
Anyway, really, this is not the best introduction to Hellraiser, in my opinion. You talk about the gore not really living up to the way Robert and I built it up in the first one and how visceral it was. Well, the funny thing is, compared to the source material, even the first movie was significantly toned down.
If you've never
massively.
read, for the record out there, anyone, if you've never read Clive Barker, you have no idea. Like it is. If you've never seen the director's cut of Nightbreed, understand something. Even that is significantly toned down because the entire climax of that features the most bizarre blending of physical pain. And if memory serves, our protagonist partially deals with the problem by ejaculating onto the rising demon.
What's the name of this movie? Sorry.
Mark, you don't have it in you to deal with Clive Barker.
No, but as you guys are talking, I'm now I like Hollywood. Hi, your consultants here, Mark and Robert. I have a pitch. Rob Zombie's Hellraiser.
Anyway. hang on. You joke. And
I don't. Like I'm dead serious.
He'd never do it because Rob Zombie hates supernatural horror. But I'm gonna preface this with a but. He might have the right understanding of character and pacing to make that work.
That's what I'm saying. Like I think Rob Zombie kind of known for excess, and maybe that's what was called for here. All right.
Yeah. Rob Zombie understands spectacle.
Yeah.
He does.
That is what this movie was sorely missing. Thank you. That was what I was looking for.
Well, hang on. He lacks the kind of I'll call it dark erotic elegance that Clive Barker brought to this world. And really, that's kind of my biggest overall overarching gripe about the whole thing is the fact that it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't need to go to extremes. But again, it's the same complaints that I would have about Hellraiser after now having experienced the Hellbound Heart. Is Hellraiser falls woefully short of the character examination, especially Frank, and help me out, Robert. The nefarious evil woman.
Miss Julia.
Julia, thank you. We get a lot more into the head of Frank and Julia in the novella than we ever got in the first movie. And just the same, there's some interesting character elements that are set up here, but they aren't really taken as far as they should have been. Like the very premise of what happens when an addict, someone with let's face it, probably a tragically self-centered personality, not in an arrogant way, but in a very much thinks of their needs first to the point of desperation, and who probably has a very conflicted relationship with sensual pleasure. And what happens when they get their hands on the box? I feel like that doesn't really go even remotely far enough, and we don't get to see enough of her relationship with her brother, because obviously he gets picked off first. Arguably, I think the best moment is at the end, when, after being granted the lament configuration, she seems, I don't want to say regretful or blasé necessarily about it, but just kind of resigned and accepting that this is what she deserves. And she's not going to pretend it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it was the only possible fair conclusion to her. In a way, though, I don't think... How do I want to put this? I don't think the deaths were quite as violent, because when it came to Frank's death at the beginning of the original movie, you got to remember, Frank was a hedonist. Frank had been driven to the absolute critical mass of masochism by seeking sensual pleasure. And the Cenobites, in some very intimate ways, granted that to him tenfold.
See, this all sounds like such a more interesting movie, and the more you're talking about it, the more I'm realizing that one of my issues I didn't even realize I had, not to sound like the dirty pervert of the group, but how much sex is missing from this remake, which I think then goes back to my initial accusation of, I don't think you people knew what was exciting about this first one. If this is what you think people want to see in the second one. So much like why the Golden Girls got canceled, the Hellraiser, not enough sex.
Well, but again, you also have some, I think, some really kind of intriguing elements that were added here. We have what amounts to a 13 Ghosts kind of plot. Some different rules for the lament configuration that kind of drags the franchise needfully away from the territory it's straight into, where Pinhead all of a sudden went from, not necessarily being, I think, neither good nor evil the way they were trying, or the Cenobites in general, just being neither good nor evil, to all of a sudden being bent on world domination.
Thanks, Bloodlines.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets to where they're far more neutral, and they're still deceptive, they're still cruel, but it's not in quite such a grandiose way. It's in
there's no ambition
much more
to
intimate
them.
fashion. Right. Yeah, there is no great big end game that they're aiming for. It is just kind of one intimate corruption of one's desires after another, and they just kind of keep just kind of striding forward from one victim to the next. So no, in terms of visually, viscerally satisfying kills, yeah, by and large, this is probably a letdown to a lot of people. But at the same time, I can see what Clive was really trying to do in terms of trying to tell a more personal story. I shouldn't even say Clive, because while he produced this, yeah, it's true that this was David Goyer's story. And I think I think a lot of this probably falls at his feet, because it's very capably directed. I think the craft is outstanding. I Jamie Clayton was a tremendous replacement for Doug Bradley as Pinhead. And I think in a way it's almost kind of a Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger situation, where admirable job
with better material, we'd be talking about it a lot differently.
Yeah, exactly. Doing the best she could with what she was given. Although, of course, unlike the Nightmare remake, we're not talking about an out-and-out flop here. We're just talking about something that was still really good, but it feels like with just a few more tweaks, with just a little bit more ambition, we would be talking about a wholly different movie. Like, we would be talking about the Halloween 2018 or the Wes Craven's New Nightmare of the Hellraiser franchise. But yeah, as introductions to the franchise go, my recommendation would be do not go with this one. I would say read/listen to the Hellbound Heart. Watch the first two movies. Your judgment whether you want to watch the third. Skip absolutely everything else until Inferno. And then go ahead and just jump into this one as kind of a coda to your Hellraiser experience.
I'm going to disagree slightly. I think to fully understand what this movie means to the fans, you do have to see everything. You have to you kind of have to understand that this is so much better than we've had for like a decade. You know, again, like, to understand how relieving it is not to be in pain, you do kind of have to be in pain for a while.
I could see that. I'm just thinking of this in terms of just strict enjoyment. Like,
yeah,
in terms of do you actually want to enjoy the movies in this franchise you're about to watch? In that case, I stand by my statement.
The only thing I'd toss in there as well, I would throw Hellseeker in there.
Which one was Hellseeker? Remind me.
Oh, that's the one with I forget the actor's name. He plays the Irish guy in Oz, but he's the one who's married to or fiancé to Kirsty, and then spends the movie kind of trying to find her. And at the end, it comes out that he's actually the drowned corpse, and Kirsty sold him and a few other people off to.
Right. Yes.
I include.
You're talking about O'Reilly from Oz?
Yeah. That actor is the lead in Hellseeker.
Okay.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly. Again, I forget the actor's name.
Yeah.
But I include that one because that one has left me more unsettled the more I think about it. Not for anything deliberate that I think it did, but one, you get to see Kirsty one-up Pinhead again, which is always great.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it nails, I think, in a very different way, the ending this movie was going for, because the look on Kirsty's face as she's walking away from the corpse of her boyfriend, I forget the exact relationship. Like one of the EMTs or the cops who's on site at the accident hands her the box and says, "Well, this is yours. It came out of your stuff," and she has to leave with it. So she's still carrying kind of both the literal and metaphorical weight of what she just did to get away from Pinhead finally claiming his due. And the look on her face just for that little moment, and it's unfair to completely compare this actress's performance to Ashley Lawrence as the absolute god tier final girl. She is the top of the mountain, in my opinion.
She's kind of the only final girl to ever sort of retire undefeated.
Yeah, she really is. I mean, Laurie, depending on which timeline we're talking about, and I look forward to Michael finally getting her in Halloween Ends before he's undone.
Derpy Gaming wants to know, was it good or good enough to be forgettable? It was good, but do not go in expecting anything close to the first two.
Yeah. It is very competently made. It is very coherent. it cares about the material it's touching on, which is, again, so much more than we've had for at least 3 films, that the fandom collectively throwing up its hands in joy at just not having to deal with another pile of crap is a lot of what's happened in the kind of the discourse around this, in my opinion. And I don't blame them. I'm there with you guys.
Hey, you know what? I think you can extend that out to this sort of where we are with film right now in general, where was it? I can't remember. It was like an article or something or a podcast recently where it might have actually been the Critical Drinker who brought this up, where it just seems like so many handlers of IP hate the fans of said IP and are actively antagonizing them. And we're like, they're purposely now creating projects, creating art that antagonizes the people that are supposed to enjoy this sort of thing, and in turn those people are then attacking it, and then the people then creating it are going, see, they're animals, nothing makes them happy. It's just like the gaslighting in a circle is that where we are in film and art is pretty interesting to say the least. Go ahead, Sean.
You know, in terms of horror cinema, if you don't mind a little bit of a non sequitur with a kind of a gooey center of recommendation for you, you know whose franchise kind of resurgence has actually been a legitimate joy to witness? Fucking Child's Play.
Oh yeah, the series on Sci-Fi is pretty good.
It's not just the sci-fi series. It's the fact that ever since Curse of Chucky, Don Mancini, who is a fantastic creator, and you got to say this for him, he's never afraid to try something different.
Mm-hmm. Boy, ain't that
even when it doesn't work, but he still managed to craft 7 movies and 1 full season and a current 2nd season of a TV series that still maintains a fully coherent continuity all the way through. We're not counting the remake here, but everything that he has actually touched, he maintains a strict continuous story told all the way. And of course, you know, a lot of fans kind of turned on the franchise after Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky, understandably, because again, he wanted to try something new. It maybe didn't entirely pan out the way he would have liked, but he pivoted to something darker and much more gothic in Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, and then managed to continue that into, you know, Chucky the TV series, which has been almost, from what I've seen, almost nothing but excellent so far. And that's kind of what I wish Hellraiser could have had all the way through. In terms of, I like to think there's some alternate universe where Clive just kind of maintains control all the way through the franchise, and even if it's not necessarily one continuous story like that, at least everything is going to have that same consistent spirit.
I think Hellraiser might work just with listening to you guys talk about it. Hellraiser might have worked as almost like a Twilight Zone kind of a thing where, you know, we have each movie is a different cast of characters, different setup, but the Cenobites are always sort of a central piece to it.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is, though.
That was kind of the idea.
Exactly why it didn't work.
Well, hang on. That was kind of the idea that was bandied about. The problem is there was no top-down kind of oversight, because for a while, what you would get coming out of the studio to keep the rights was we have and Sean and I talked about this, but you have a halfway decent script, might make for an okay movie. How about we slap Hellraiser on it? Here's the box. Here's the Cenobites. We fill it out. We make sure we get to the runtime, and Bob's your uncle.
Right. I was saying that there needs to be more of a through line and some coherency to this, you know, and not just what you're saying, which essentially take somebody's $50,000 script and just slap Hellraiser on it and call it a day. Rob, finish up your craft review because we got to get moving to the next segment.
Yeah. Okay. Just very briefly on the kind of, like, because you touched on this, the state of, like, the relationship between fandom and fans and whatnot. I swear I'll be brief, because I can make this point very quickly. I arrived at a somewhat enlightened position on this recently, believe it or not, because my brother encouraged me to watch the Netflix series Sandman. And I know people who've watched it and have enjoyed it, so I started it. And about halfway through episode 6, I quit. It wasn't working. I was bored. I felt nothing. It wasn't resonating with me.
This is why I don't want to do TV reviews anymore.
Hang on. Let me make my point. If you want to know specifics, if you're curious, I'll go into it. But
no.
Alexis no. Hang on.
Alexis is doing a whole but Alexis is doing a whole show on it. Wait until then.
I'm not on that show. Again, if I were to, I'd have to finish the series to do it in good faith. All right. Mm-hmm. To anyone who wants to know my issues with it, I'll give them to you, but I'm not going to lead with that for a pretty simple reason. Fans of the graphic novel are happy with what they got. Mm-hmm. You know what? We've all been on the wrong end of that equation so often. Stephen King fan. Right? That I'm just happy you all got something you enjoy. So, you know what? Enjoy. If you're curious, if you want to talk technically what I didn't like, I'll tell you. So when it comes to this movie, I'm going to tell you, because this is the review, what I didn't like. But as a fan, it's just nice to get something that doesn't suck. So, what I liked. You know what? You guys have... Sean talked a lot about some of the positives. So let me start with... Let me do the negative, because I'm better at that. I don't like the dovetailing into the kind of Seven aesthetic for the young people, for the cannon fodder. It never quite meshes with the rest of the movie, and it's unfortunate because that's a tonal thing that you really have to take time and blend, and between the writing and some of the production, it never blends. And
okay, when you say the Seven aesthetic, what do you mean?
It's kind of the, we're in a larger city, but everything's grimy. You can substitute Crow if that feels better. Everything's a little bit dingy. Everything's a little bit dirty. Everything's a little bit...
everything we talked about with the Samaritan review.
Yeah. It's very gritty 90s kind of thing, if that makes sense. Like that portion of the movie aesthetically. So there's graffiti everywhere. There's a lot of lower lights. Everything is a little bit washed out earth tones. Everyone's wearing very drab clothing. And if you watch Seven, to deliberately evoke that aesthetic, Seven did that because David Fincher was very specific about how he wanted the city to feel that he was setting the story in. Fair enough. Here, it just doesn't quite jibe with the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The kills are pretty weak, and one of my fears for this movie was that they were going to lean too heavily on CGI, because Hellraiser, it doesn't have to be a nonstop splatterfest. In fact, the first one is very... When it goes, but a lot of it is very restrained. You get long stretches where things are just eerie or set up, or the really gnarly stuff happens off screen with just sound effects, and your imagination does the heavy lifting. But when it goes, and CGI kind of ruins that, because there was a movie we reviewed recently, Mark, where I said this about some of the violence that was in this film. Was Prey, actually, the new Predator film. The violence has no weight.
Yeah.
It's obviously fake.
I was going to say, compare that to Bullet Train, which we did the week before. And I think we even compared Prey to Bullet Train, where here is a movie where the action feels visceral, if stylized, but still visceral, as opposed to Prey, where it feels very empty and almost like a child's diorama.
In places, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that they did practically, they did very well. Some of it not so much, and I'll get to that in a second. But the CG in places is very good, because there's a few Cenobites that are obviously CG'd. In fact, the creepiest one is only there for half a second, when it's just like a skinned face on top of a neck, and you can see through the mouth and the eyes, a la Kevin Bacon's Hollow Man.
I really thought they were going to do more with that.
It's genuinely unsettling, and I wish they had.
I feel like he had kind of like a Mouth of Sauron aesthetic going on.
A little bit, yeah. And again, sadly, used for 2 scenes, and not even 2 shots, rather, more than scenes. Unfortunately for this movie, when it does lean into the CG, again, a lot of it's not great, and it's a problem. They do some cool. You can tell when the parts of this movie that the director was very passionate about, because they work. Our car chase where they're trying to leave the grounds after Nora has been marked has a genuine sense of tension and ticking clock to it. And it's very clear that the director, like, hey, this will be really cool. I can make this work. And they're just going to barely get away, and they're going to barely get away. And then we'll see Nora watch the front of the van zoom away from her as she is sucked into this realm. And it's really cool, and it really works. Then there's other times when not so much. Okay, this Cenobite that is tied up and his arms will snap off at a certain point and we'll get a crappy jump scare, and then he'll panic run his way after our heroes. Thank you, David Goyer.
Well, now you're making me wonder if this was like a Hobbit situation where we had a lot of the second unit director doing some of this.
I don't know if it was directing or if it was. I think this is more a writing issue, just to be perfectly candid. I think the big issue that this movie has is writing.
Well, I feel like what you just said, though, was that there are some technical aspects of this that do lend itself to directing, which again makes me think of like you had Bruckner, who was there and on set for some of the things that he really cared about, and then was just farming out the stuff he didn't care about to a second unit director who was just trying to keep the film in frame.
It could be like that. That's one of those things that it wouldn't shock me.
I'm guessing that's this is based on how you're describing it.
Again, it wouldn't shock me. There's some of the prosthetic work in here that's very good. I'm torn on the costuming of Pinhead because for a very specific reason, and some of this is my own expectation versus what we got. I don't know if this was a actor choice or if this was a costuming thing, but this version of Pinhead always has a forward tilt. We're not quite full on Kubrick look. If you're familiar with the Kubrick look, that's
the
camera here. When they're tipped down and they're like, Kubrick uses that to represent that a character is at their most demented. So you get that in The Shining when Jack Torrance snaps. You get it with Vincent D'Onofrio in the barracks when he's sitting on the toilet. Like Kubrick uses that a lot. And it's a nice trick because it works. It's very unsettling. Pinhead in this tends to have that kind of forward tilt to her posture.
As opposed to Doug Bradley kind of being very imperious, sort of.
It was very upright, very statuesque.
Can I also tell you, I didn't love her costuming because I don't think Pinhead has like a gender to it. Obviously, it was played by a man, and this one's played by a female. But I don't think the entity of Pinhead has gender, and so it is what it is, and it's clothed in just a black cloak, which is fine. It's supposed to look ominous and evil looking. And they kind of did this one as like, the Barbie version of Pinhead. Like we didn't need to color her up and like, oh, look, it's a girl. So she's in pink. Like
Malibu
why?
Pinhead.
Yeah. It's Malibu Pinhead. Like what the fuck are we doing here? Like,
let me speak to that very quickly.
Sure. I'm actually trying to find like some good pictures of her so you can see what I'm talking about. Like
I know what you're referencing. There is a color palette choice to this entire film, especially the Cenobites, that I feel like they deliberately went away from the original. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. But the fact that the primary color palette for the Cenobites in the original is a chalk white or an off gray offset by stark black.
Right.
And it's deliberate and it's evocative. This stuff is more... It leans more heavily into the exposed muscle, consequently a lot more pink.
Yes.
And what you wind up with is pink exposed muscle and then bloodless white flesh. And I get the intent and I get the idea, but unfortunately the end result is...
it's a little girly.
Yeah,
and unnecessarily girly for a character that gender shouldn't have been an issue for.
Well, it's not just Pinhead. I feel this is true of pretty much all of them. It's very almost pastel.
Yeah,
in some respects. Again, it's not bright pastel, but if you turn the saturation way, way, way down on a lot of pink and gray pastel coloration, you'd get something similar to this. And it's a choice. Again, does it work as well? I mean, you don't want to evoke deliberately too much of stuff that you're not going to live up to. Like I think it's smart to go in the other direction in a lot of ways.
But this should also make some degree of sense. And this
here's the only thing I would have said about that. If you want to go this direction, my advice, your exposed muscle and whatnot, it needs to be bright red. This needed a color contrast more than it needed to be as washed out as it was. That would have been my issue. And they might have tried and it didn't look good. There might have been a budgetary or a timing issue. I don't know, but that's my 2 cents on it. I think you're right about the characters, Mark, and I think the problem, again, this red on her needs to pop, not be this muted.
Right. Yeah. So you see now what I mean by it's like Pinhead Barbie, where it's like, why is she so pink and girly looking? Unnecessarily. And now that I'm looking close,
hang on. Scroll that back down a little bit. Scroll that back down so we see the guy spinning on the thing. Yeah. Her exposed muscle needs to be the red of that merry-go-round.
Agreed. Yeah. That now that you've brought that up, that's why I wanted to put the picture up on here, because I'm looking at this and I can see now, and maybe because I was sitting far away from the TV at the time, I didn't notice it as much. I thought it was fabric, but I see what they're going for here, like you said. But you're right. That's the wrong shade of red. That needs to almost be brighter and a little bit more gory, maybe a little bit more gross. Maybe something along the lines of that color.
Yeah,
for it to work.
Something like that.
Okay, so there we are again. Where we're evoking sort of a what's the show that everyone loves on Hulu? The one with the nuns, not the nuns. The abortion show that everyone loves. Damn it!
Oh, Handmaid's Tale.
The Handmaid's Tale, we're evoking like a handmaid, like a kinky Handmaid's Tale here thing going. But again, it's got this like really weird pink tone to it.
Well, since you had Whisper up on the screen there a minute ago, this is the one design for the Cenobites in this one that I did not care for this version of Whisper at all. And I can tell you why.
Did you like her better as a Nitro Girl?
Please stop.
Thank you.
The get up on Whisper looks too fake.
Yeah.
The Whisper in the original is kept minimal, and her throat is cut open and splayed open like that, but it's literally from here to here. So she speaks in a whisper because her voice box is exposed.
Right.
And it's held open by things that kind of come out of her cheeks. And it's horrifying in its simplicity. Whereas what we have with her is basically a second orifice that's opened up from here to about here. And then she's split open again further down. And there's the scene where she walks out of shadow into light. And I'm watching this going, oh, you wanted to go for exposed muscle there on your costume, on your suit. The problem is your muscle isn't moving while she's moving. And suddenly I'm very aware of how fake that all is.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, Robert?
Yeah. I had a couple of major... hang on. I had a couple of major concerns after watching the trailer. And they were as follows, and I'm going to get to all of them. One, was worried about the acting and the actors. I think that largely panned out. It wasn't terrible, but it's not great. If you were to stereotype acting in a horror movie, that's what we've got here. Good, bad, that's kind of how that is. I was worried about the music. Now, trailer music does not equal film music 90% of the time, so I put that up there as an important caveat, but that did concern me. So listening to the music here, and I think the only part of this movie, the production team who didn't get the memo about please don't evoke too much of the first two, was our composer, because there's huge segments of this that are basically homages / lifted from Christopher Young's excellent
One might even say
most about the last 15 minutes.
Yeah. One might even say they're a cover song of the original.
Yeah, in places it very much is, and it's very noticeable. And I would have I would have rather he did his own thing, because the composer in this case has enough other credits to his work. He's actually worked with the director before. He scored The Ritual, so I know the man knows what he's doing.
And the funny thing is, there were parts of about the first 2 acts, and it's so subtle. I couldn't blame a lot of people for maybe not noticing it, and maybe I'm even hallucinating a little bit because I was kind of waiting for it. But there are parts where I'll catch like just a little tinge of maybe a chord or a chord structure or something.
Oh, they're there
in the score that sounds just ever so slightly like I'm waiting any second after hearing it for Christopher Young's theme or some variation on it to kick in, and it doesn't quite do it. That legitimately impressed me.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Cypress Hill covering "Jump Around" by House of Pain. Just keep going. That was done for somebody very specifically. Yep, just
Fair
keep
enough.
going.
All right, here was my other big concern.
I miss that face, Sean. I really do.
My other big concern was Pinhead. Not for the costuming, but for the voice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having seen the movie, I figured out what my big issue was, but my concern about the modulation that went on, and I figured this out as the movie played. The voice clips they selected for the trailer were times when the modulation was different from how it is. Her modulation changes throughout this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's... some of it's doubled. Some of it is just, again, some of it's modulated in other ways. And different iterations of the modulation work better than others. And when you're going to change it a lot, that's going to be the case. Unfortunately, a lot of the lines they lifted for the trailer were when it was in a configuration that grated on me in the wrong way. That made me go, please stop talking. Please stop talking. Here's the other thing, and having rewatched the trailer, I'm sure of this as much too now. I don't know if this is the actress. I don't know if this was this was a directorial choice. But this actress in this performance lisps on her S's to the point where when she goes, it sounds like this. We have such sights to show you. I was waiting for Elmer Fudd to kick in. Like, it's really, really, like, it's a really noticeable thing, the way she is lisping on those S's. And I have to assume it was either an actor choice or a director choice, because if you can't be a professional actor with that speech pattern, it's too off-putting. And it really is unfortunate, again, especially for that line, because that's one of those lines, man, that if you're going to put... I think they shouldn't have used it, to be unbearably candid. I get that it's the iconic Pinhead line. It's on the freaking movie posters. Like, we have such sights to show you. But if you can't get the delivery on that, and I don't think they did here, and again, I don't know if this is director, I don't know if this is actor, I don't know what combination of it is, I actually laughed. And that's the exact opposite. Like, put this version of that line next to Doug Bradley's from the original. There is no comparison. And by using that exact line, this is the only time I'm going to make that direct comparison, by the way. You're inviting it. Please don't invite it, because that's a disservice to your film. Don't do that. You shouldn't have done it. I don't know what you should have said instead. Come up with a different line. But that's one of those lines, man. You do that right, you do that justice, or you wisely don't do it at all. And sadly, I'm going to assume Goyer, man, because he's the kind of screenwriter who would say, this is something I have to put in here, whether or not the actor can handle it. And unfortunately, didn't work out this time. Again, other instances of the voice modulation are fine. I came around to this Pinhead screen presence kind of by the end, because it's very different. But I did get there, and I kind of got what they were going for by the time the movie wraps. But I feel like it shouldn't have taken that long. Here's the other problem with the Cenobites in this. And this is to Mark's point. Hey, let's remake something but not understand what makes it work. You know how much screen time the Cenobites have in the first movie?
Barely any.
Less than
it's Frank
10.
and it is Frank, Julia, and Kirsty's movie far more than it is the Cenobites.
They're in that movie for less than 10 minutes. They have less than 10 minutes of screen time. Understanding when less is more is kind of a key component of making these things work. Believe it or not, they're not even on the screen all that much in 2, where they're featured more prominently. There's still giant segments of that are either just in the hospital or Charnard and Julia. Like, they're featured more prominently, but the Cenobites are one of those instances where more is not better. You don't want more of them. It ruins partially ruins the illusion. They're meant to be shocking, and shock goes away the more you're exposed to it. It's why exposure therapy works. I think this movie overuses various Cenobites, and it's unfortunate because when the restraint is shown, I think it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first time they show up and kind of menace Riley after she avoids being stabbed, I thought worked quite well as just kind of again, in the background, briefly seen in frame. The fact that by the end of it, we're just full-on conversations between Pinhead and Riley as Pinhead goes, you have plot armor, so I'm curious to see what you'll do with the box rather than just taking you right now for no discernible reason other than your plot armor.
So what you're saying is you were kind of longing for more moments like Doug Bradley just standing over the pile of gore and just saying, "We want the one who did this."
Yeah. And I love that scene also because he doesn't chase Kirsty when she runs. Like Pinhead doesn't chase people.
We are
No.
almost an hour and a half into this. We got to get going.
Yeah. So again, final thoughts. For me, this is, again, in the Hellraiser pantheon of films, from the highest. Hellraiser, I will stand by this also for the Hellraiser franchise. I don't think there's another horror franchise. I don't care how high your highs are. I don't care how low your lows are. You don't have the highs of this contrasted with the lows of this in any one franchise. Even Nightmare on Elm Street, which has some god-awful lows.
I was going to say, Friday the 13th, you don't think some high highs and low lows?
It does. Hang on. It does, but with a couple of caveats.
I mean,
One,
Jason X, Jason Goes to Space.
Stop. Let me make my point here about this.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Jason X is hilarious. It understands that it's a comedy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Second, I love Nightmare on Elm Street. The good entries into that franchise, I do. I love them. I don't think they're as good as the first 2 Hellraiser movies. I just don't. And you can argue it. That's a personal thing. And if you disagree with me, I don't think you're wrong. But for me, here's the other thing. When I talk about the highs of highs to the lows, I'll watch that god-awful Nightmare on Elm Street remake before I ever touch Revelations or Judgment again. Ever.
I gotta watch these now just to see what the hell you guys are on about.
You want to?
No.
Okay, you know what? You want to do that to yourself after we're warning you? Fine, go ahead. I don't know where they're streaming, but they're somewhere.
Which is the dirt worst? Revelations?
You can argue Revelations or Judgment. Like it kind of depends. Look, you know what? You would hate Revelations.
After 10 years, you're not going to listen to me? Fine. Why don't you go throw Jason Goes to Hell in there too? Give it a try. He's
triple
good,
feature.
Here's why you would hate Revelations more, Mark.
In 10 words or less.
About a third of it is found footage.
Ugh. Well, now I don't care anymore. All right, are we done here?
So my point about that, in the Pantheon, again, I said I rank it somewhere around 5th position, give or take, which is better than a lot of this franchise. Again, we're 11 movies deep at this point. If you're top half, you're doing pretty good. This is as close to reward as long-suffering fans of this franchise are ever going to get. I think we've just lost too many of the people who knew what made this thing work in film, in cinematic form, to get something that's genuinely great. So I will accept at this point passable as just something that's not giving me more pain.
Yeah. It sounds like a domestic violence situation. It's like, oh well, he didn't beat me tonight, so I guess he must love me.
This is one of those this franchise and a period of and the authority angle on Monday Night Raw got me out of abusive relationships with media.
And on that note, may I move on? Here comes. Yes, here we go. Here comes the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
All right. Well, there is no money to be had. This was a streaming movie on Netflix. Let's put that there. There we go. Just release information. Hellraiser had its world premiere at the Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas on September 28th, 2022. It screened at Beyond Fest in Santa Monica, California on October 4th, 2022. The film was released in the U.S. by the Disney platform distribution via streaming exclusively on Hulu October 7th as a Hulu original. And we'll get to the reception in just a second. And yeah, there's no budget on this. I haven't really heard anything about it.
No listed budget. That's unfortunate.
A lot of these streaming movies, they don't list the budget.
If I had to guess, we're in the 50-ish million range, probably, between prosthetic work and CGI.
I would say, yeah. So this past week, as far as what was in the box office, Smile, which I will be seeing Wednesday.
Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to be like hand over my eyes.
I think you'll be fine.
That was the number one movie of the weekend. Lyle Crocodile.
Unfortunate. Dude, Lyle, if you couldn't unseat Smile in its second week.
Yeah.
That ain't good.
That debuted at number 2. Amsterdam, which apparently is bombing in all kinds of directions, came in at number 3. The Woman King, the hailed Woman King.
For the record, I have another reason to hate that movie, having never actually seen it, believe it or not.
Okay.
It is utterly ahistorical. The actual story is so much more interesting than this piece of shit movie.
That fell from 3 to 4. Don't Worry, Darling, which the pitch meeting guy just tore pieces, and I think there was somewhere else. I think even the critically acclaimed guys were like, "What the fuck with this movie?" That fell from 2 to 5.
Brian George is great. Also, Don't Worry, Darling should have a subtitle. Like Dr. Strangelove, you know how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How I learned that Olivia Wilde is the worst person in the world to work for. Please bring back Harvey Weinstein.
I still have no idea what happened there. It's because I haven't been arsed to really catch up on that whole backstory. I just know there's a whole thing with
Florence Pugh can't stand her.
Yeah, Florence Pugh and
Chris
Harry Styles, I think.
Harry Styles is in it. Chris Pine. Like, no one who worked on that thing has a good thing to say about the experience of working on it.
So Avatar dropped from 4 to 6. I took my kids to go see Avatar Friday, and
what was their reaction?
So, well, I want to talk about a couple of things in my experience with taking my kids to this. One, I've now started to refer to my son as the critical stinker because I'm sitting with my daughter, 11 years old, a lovely child, just obedient and sweet and everybody's friend, needs some help with math, but she's really just the best kid. And she grew up with the Disney princesses, and she loves the Little Mermaid. And I have my son, who is 8 years old and is basically a miniature version of me, minus the love of combat sports. And yeah. And so I'm watching the teaser trailer for the Little Mermaid that everyone else has seen at this point. I haven't really been watching trailers because I go to the movies enough that I don't want the experience ruined anymore. So I wait to see them in the theaters. I don't watch them on YouTube anymore. Anyway, they do the teaser trailer and they do the up close of the new actress playing Ariel, and my daughter shrieks with glee. She's like almost in tears. She's so happy. Like the whole neckbeard argument over this being a black actress and the color of her hair and all of that, utterly lost on my daughter, who's just so happy to see the Little Mermaid in live action and is just.
I'm sure she'll be very happy until she actually has to see the movie and then deal with that trauma.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But my point is, her initial visceral reaction to the trailer was of joy. And I hear in the distance my son go, "Yeah, that doesn't look that great." And,
to be fair, your son's right. The cinematography on that thing and the color saturation and whatnot, it does not look good.
And it just kind of a surmising of everything Twitter. My daughter going, I like it, shut up. And my son going, I can't help it if it sucks. Like, it's not my fault. And I'm just listening to the two of them like, I have raised Twitter.
What you've distilled is Damn You Hollywood into a 20-second interaction.
Yeah, really. No shit. Well, that brings me to my second thing. So we watched Avatar, and my daughter has all the right reactions. All the military is dumb. The blue cat people are great. And why are we killing all the indigenous Indians and all of that? She's having all the right reactions you're supposed to have to this movie. My son,
congratulations, James Cameron. You've once again successfully manipulated a preteen girl.
Yeah. My son, I look at him and I'm like, Jonas, what did you think of Avatar? He was like, I was entertained. I just have one question. I'm like, what's that, son? He was like, if you and Robert were reviewing this movie, would there be a lot of screaming? And I was like, wow, dude. And I had to explain to him that what the words derivative and cultural touchstone meant. Because that's Avatar in a nutshell. Anyway, we had fun though. Moving on, that dropped from 4 to 6. Barbarian maintained its spot at number 7, 5 weeks in. Bros dropped from 5 to 8. Top Gun Maverick rose a spot from 10 to 9.
Top Gun Maverick is going to single-handedly make Disney try to buy that IP.
Terrifier came in at number 10.
Terrifier 2.
There is no try with Disney. There is buy or not buy.
No, they're having to be careful because at the moment they're not quite big enough to actually outmuscle the federal government, but they're getting close. If they get too much bigger right now, they can be slapped down with antitrust lawsuits and whatnot. But
all right, Triangle of Sadness debuted at 21. Tar debuted at number 23. The Storied Life of AJ Frickery at 24. Project Wolf Hunting 33. Pretty Problems at 36. Losing Ground, which is a re-release at 47, and that was the weekend. I've heard lots of good things about Smile. I'm not really surprised it maintained its spot at number one. Lyle Crocodile seems like it's one of those things where, like, if families were motivated to go see it, it might have done fine, but I'm not entirely sure this was even reaching families.
That movie makes me feel bad for Javier Bardem because he's so talented.
Mm-hmm. Worldwide, not a lot of changes here. Top Gun, Jurassic World, Doctor Strange, Minions, The Batman, Thor, Watergate, Fantastic Beasts, Sonic, Uncharted. Everything's pretty much where it was last week. Here are all the movies currently doing better than Morbius. Uncharted, Elvis, The Bad Guys. I love it when people who haven't heard me do that bit are on and they laugh every time. No, it's a good bit. Lightyear, Too Cool to Kill, nice.
Hey. Bullet Train did better than Lightyear.
Yeah. If we didn't need to be convinced that Lightyear was fucking, one of this year's biggest bombs, in terms of like potential versus actual. DC,
and again, like you hit the nail on the head there. How do you screw that up? That shouldn't have been that hard.
Yeah, no, that Pixar has some big egg on its face. DC League of Super Pets, The Lost City, nope. All currently doing better than Morbius. All right. As far as we are pretty much pulling the plane now out of the tailspin. We're riding the ship. We're just about done with streaming movies for a while, but it's kind of like a slow transition back to theatrical exclusivity because this week, and I say that because if you've been following DMU Hollywood, it was after Bullet Train, which was our last in theater exclusive. Right, not in this particular order, but Prey, The Gray Man, Samaritan, Pinocchio, and I think there was there might have been one more in there. This week coming up, this Friday is Halloween Ends. Blonde, yeah.
I understand your desire to put off your trauma, but we did review Blonde.
Yes, that was the last one. That was last week. Very good. So this week coming up is Halloween Ends, but that's also day and date on Peacock, which is not a real service. So, and then after that is Black Adam, and then after that
I deeply appreciate that I beat that into you.
Listen, this is mutual, man. You've stolen my bits. I've stolen back, your bits. We're we're a team, buddy. So that being said, like I said, we got Halloween End, which will win its weekend, despite the fact that it's day and date. I actually think a lot of people are going to go to the theater to see that because I don't think a lot of people have Peacock to see it at home. Plus, I think we're at a place now where if people want the in-theater experience, they'll go. Not, you're either wearing a mask or you're not, but I don't think the I'm afraid of COVID thing is as prevalent now as it was a year ago. It's definitely not as a year ago. But I would say
where I live.
I would say last 3 to 6 months, it's just, you at one point talked about COVID as being endemic. And I think that's just where it is now, where it's out. It's just part of the culture. It's part of the medical culture. It's just, it's like flu season. It's something we're all living with. And if you want to go to the movies, you go. If you don't, you don't. It's no longer about avoiding the virus.
We spent way too much time as a purely, not as a political thing, but purely as a logistical response to what happened. Like, oh gosh, nobody handled that right. Nobody.
All right, and then we return to theater exclusivity with Black Adam, which will win its weekend. Then Pray for the Devil, which will win its weekend.
Not sold on that.
I mean, it's not a whole lot of wide releases here to be competitive with.
I'm just saying Black Adam might repeat. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair. I'll take that. November 4th, we've got the wide release of Armageddon Time. I frankly think that
I have no idea what that is.
That would be Sean coming in and out.
No, I meant the movie.
Oh. Yeah, we saw the trailer for it when I took the kids to go see Avatar. In any case, that might be a situation where either Prey or Black Adam are still one and two. And then November 11th is Black Panther. That'll easily win its weekend, despite the 3-hour fucking runtime.
3-hour runtime.
Sons of bitches.
Who thought that was a good idea?
And then after that, the 18th, we have The Menu being competitive with 13 Lives. And she said, hey, Robert, I edited the schedule. I'm going to be really busy that weekend, so we're just going to do The Menu instead of The Menu. And she said, I'm sparing you another Me Too movie is basically what's happening here. I'll just watch it when I have time.
Not only do I appreciate that, I guarantee you the audience appreciates that.
And then Strange World is your Thanksgiving release. It'll win its weekend, though I saw the trailer for The Fablemans. It actually looks really good. I just don't. That's one where I think people like my parents' age will go see it, and not many.
Yeah, it's too hard to sell to the wide audience.
Yeah. Violent Night.
Oh yeah. 2nd. Hook that into my veins, baby. Give me more David Harbour.
I have plans on the calendar to see that. We will be reviewing it. That'll win this weekend.
I insist you take your son to that movie.
Ooh, that comes up birthday. Do you mind if I sit in on that one?
What? Violent Night?
Yes.
Maybe.
I have no objection.
I don't. No one. Alexis is going to be on that show. She beat you to it.
Never mind.
Yeah. So what's funny about that? I'm mildly amused as the schedule master. I am mildly amused because she was like, "Oh, hey, let me get in on Hellraiser." I'm like, "Sean beat you to it." She's like, "Fuck, never mind."
Tough shit.
No, it's fun. Like both of you, it's just like, "Oh, he's gonna be there. She's gonna be there."
Stay mad.
She's fine. You're fine. We're all fine.
That's what I said. Stay mad.
Anyway, so yeah, Violent Night's December 2nd, and then the 9th. So the 9th is Empire of Light, which is in wide release.
Here's what I insist we all do for the 9th. Okay?
Nothing.
No. I don't care how far you have to drive.
Oh, we're doing Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio for that week.
No, we're doing that. Here's what I want everyone else to do.
Oh, okay.
Again, we're doing the stop motion animation thing that is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I look forward to it, especially after the abomination that's on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
For everyone else, go see The Whale because Brendan Fraser deserves everything.
Fair.
Yes.
All right, and by the way, House Party, which was the remake of the original comedy classic, which was supposed to be an HBO Max exclusive, but with the HBO Max Discovery merger, that thing got kicked. What appears to be in limited release into theaters. I can't imagine.
I don't
get that.
Idea.
Avatar: Way of the Water is December 16th. That'll win its weekend. I don't think
It will,
do...
but I still think that movie bombs.
I don't know if it bombs necessarily, but definitely doesn't do $1 million. It doesn't do $1 billion.
Bombs relative to what James Cameron wants it to do. Like, that thing's gonna make 600 million pretty easily.
Yeah, I was gonna say between 4 and 6. And then we get into the Christmas.
It's not doing what he wants it to do.
Yeah, and then
I don't think it's gonna maintain that same protracted stranglehold on the box office that the other one did.
And then
everything looks like it now.
December 21st. Yeah, December 21st. We've got the biopic for Whitney Houston's "I Want to Dance with Somebody," and that's up against Puss in Boots for all the kids out there for Christmas week. Your actual Christmas day. Now we're gonna do Babylon, but we're not gonna do Babylon until it's in wide release in January. And the other one is Women Talking, starring Rooney Mara. And then that's it. So, Damn You Hollywood, in case anyone's interested, goes Halloween Ends, Black Adam, Pray for the Devil. We skip a week and do election coverage, and we're back with Black Panther, then The Menu, then Strange World, then Violent Night, then Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, then Avatar, and then we end the year with a Netflix exclusive, the sequel to Knives Out, which is Glass Onion. So we are ending the year with a streaming movie after a long series of actual in-theater features, which is fun. All right, and that is the money for this evening. So, Sean, I know that you're trying to quell your nerd rage, and we appreciate you. We applaud you. We're here for you, but fuck that noise. I need you to unzip your pants and unravel your nerd rage for this next bit.
Well, thankfully, we seem to have been spared the unzipping.
Whatever.
We are not yet streaming on the platforms that encourage that.
We'll talk about our OnlyFans later. He'll be back momentarily. Anyway, Robert, are you ready?
Yeah, bring it on.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
It's just you and me, baby. Sean said he, instead of ducking out, that he just got cut off, and he was like, F it, I'm done for the night, but thanks for having me on back here. His exact words were, I didn't even have to exit out voluntarily. I just got cut off. So that's going to be me. It's going to be it for me for a while. I checked my connection. Have a great rest of the show. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Always nice to talk to Sean. He knows he's welcome here anytime.
No, it was good to have you. Honestly, like me and you talking Hellraiser wouldn't have been nearly as effective since I'm not as familiar with the franchise. I like it when we have people who are like invested in the IP on, like when we had Zach on for Pinocchio. Brings an extra level that but then there's what everyone came here for. And that's me and you, baby. Let's do this thing. So
I need an adult.
So Hellraiser.
That's about fair.
I was gonna say everyone just had a Kumsi Kumsa on it. Like, it's fine, which is about where I landed.
I actually agree with the critical consensus, believe it or not.
A gift for long-suffering fans after numerous subpar sequels. David Bruckner's Hellraiser unlocks the puzzle box for getting the franchise back on the right track. If you say so.
Well, again, like, you have to understand where we're going from to get to here. This is a much more positive direction than the last several entries.
Well, Valerie Complex of Deadline Hollywood Daily says, up yours, top critic. Pinhead and Lament configuration bring no pleasure, only pain.
Again, there's plenty of things to be critical about for this film, and one of the reasons I was deliberately critical is I wanted to take off my fandom hat so as to not just go, boy, this is really good. I'm just so glad it doesn't suck. I think it's like there's an overcorrection in the reaction to this from a lot of people, and that's fine. Again, that's fine. We've all been through a lot. I understand this. I understand. Please do understand, though, that this movie is not at all above criticism. There's a fair bit we can get into.
Jonathan Hickman of Daily Film Fix says Hellraiser is hopelessly convoluted when it should have gone back to the streamlined story that began the franchise.
See, I'm gonna disagree with the convoluted part here. What this movie is poorly written in the sense that you can very much tell, again, you can feel the author's hand in this story a lot, and that's a big problem with the writing. It's not convoluted, but it is exponentially convenient.
Emily Wheeler of Film Inquiry says, now this is a fresh review, but I wanted to get your take on it. Right. For a Hellraiser movie, this is fairly prim and proper, but what's lost in gleeful sexuality is made up for in its eerily beautiful style. Like, I don't know.
I don't get prim and proper out of this, even by Hellraiser standards. I think that's a pretty serious misread. I'm also gonna go out on a limb and say that, again, like, this movie lacks its visceral reaction. I see you found our friend. And like you and I kind of mentioned, there needed to be more of a kind of guttural sexual component to this film, because that's what Hellraiser taps into so very, very well. It's what makes it disturbing.
Yeah.
There's a line from the movie, I forget who directed it, but it stars Nicolas Cage, Joaquin Phoenix, James Gandolfini, Peter Stormare. It's called 8mm.
Yeah.
And the line from Joaquin Phoenix is he takes Nicolas Cage on a journey into the den of depravity, as Nicolas Cage is a character investigating the authenticity of an alleged snuff film. He asks him at one point, he tells him, you need to be worried, because if you dance with the devil doesn't change, but he changes you. And he brings that point up again at one point after they come back from an underground club scenario, where he says, so, you get turned on by places like that? And Nicolas Cage rightly goes, no. And he goes, yeah, but you didn't exactly get turned off either, did you? And Nicolas Cage has a moment of reflection, like, devil's changing you already, buddy. And that kind of element needs to be a bit more present in this, and it's just kind of not for this movie, and it is a missing component.
All right, so we're going to end with our friend here, since we've missed him. We thought we ran him off of Rotten Tomatoes, but he is back, baby. Our friend, Kevin Carr of Fat Guy at the Movies. While it's not as visceral and hard-hitting as the original or its much maligned sequel, this attempt...
nothing... Okay, stop, you jackass.
Can I...
There's... No. I have to correct this idiot. There's nothing wrong with the immediate sequel to Hellraiser. He's referencing further sequels, which are much maligned for damn good reason. But if you say sequel, you mean the one immediately following. And that one is every bit as good, if not better, than the original. Piss off.
This attempt to reboot the franchise hits the mark and doesn't pull its punches. I believe we spent an hour and a half saying it does pull its punches. That's half the problem.
That really is. That said, I think it does hit the target. Again, is this a bullseye? No. But you're not shooting someone in the audience, which was
now that I know that this is like psychosexual, this franchise one.
A little bit, yeah.
For all you ladies out there.
Depends on the individual film. The first one, very much so.
Well, I'm much more interested now. Like when you guys, and again, I just listened to these last summer, and I remember those conversations when you guys talked about it. I don't think you talked about how sexual it was. You guys definitely talked about how gory it was, and and how visceral the kills were. And I was like, okay, well, this is not going to be for me then. If I had known that this was more of a punishment for all your sexual sins kind of a thing, thematically, I would have tried to watch it and just hid my eyes like a sissy baby when it got too gory for me. But I would have been into the theme.
Well, okay. Backing up a step from how I've tried to sell Hellraiser to you in the past, let me tell you the driving tension of the first Hellraiser movie. The driving tension of the first Hellraiser movie is a wife trying to rekindle / reconnect an affair with her husband's brother. That's our driving tension. Like, she's unsatisfied in her marriage. She doesn't care much for her stepdaughter. She had an affair with her husband's brother, this being the titular Frank, who went off and was never satisfied with anything. And there was a joke on the set of the original Hellraiser, like one of the production, I forget who it was, someone in the production meeting or the production team wanted to subtitle it because originally had different subtitles. It had different titles. I didn't sell them Hellraiser for a while. But someone said, we should really just call this "What Lengths a Woman Will Go to get a Good Fuck." Because she lures hapless men up to the attic of her house and kills them so that Frank can destroy and reincorporate their body into his as he has escaped from the Cenobites. And he comes back as like the very basic essence of what it means to be a physical human. And killing other people rebuilds his form.
Well, we often talk about like, if when you watch these remakes, just skip it and watch the original. What if you haven't watched the original? One of the things that these remakes tend to do is inspire people to go back and watch them. Again, I give the Firestarter example.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have ever sat through the original Firestarter had I not been wanting to review the new one that's on Peacock, which is not a real service. If nothing else came from my experience with this modern Hellraiser remake, is that I'm now much more inspired than I ever have been to sit through the first one. So,
what if you're gonna watch the first one? Watch the second one too.
Okay.
Like,
hey, out there, lady, we have to do a binge watch now of Hellraiser 1 and 2.
Look, this is the only thing I say. If you're gonna watch the first one, and if you come out of it and you're not utterly repulsed, and I say that like if this is just very clearly so much not for you that you don't want to continue. If that's what you arrive at, fair enough. If you enjoyed the experience, that doesn't mean fun, but if you found it a rewarding film experience, watch the second one. After that, again, if you choose to follow down that full path, know that you will step off several cliffs. But the first two are absolutely worth watching if this is in your wheelhouse.
All right. This week on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, tomorrow I will be out. But Alexis Hana is threatening to review Werewolf by Night, which was the TV special on Disney Plus from Marvel, based on the comic book series Werewolf by Night, just in time for Halloween. Apparently, it's getting very good marks, very good reviews. I think her and Andrew Azrozko from the MCU's Bleeding Edge are going to be reviewing it together. So look for that. Wednesday, it looks like Jesse's continued Unity series from Unspoken Issues will be dropping. And then for those of you looking for my beautiful face, I will be back Thursday with myself. I'll be back Thursday with myself. Myself and Jesse Starcher will be back Thursday to continue our trip from the corner to the deuce, this time with The Wire Season 3, The Fall of the Barksdale Organization, and the Rise of Marlowe Stansfield, the Reformation season.
Oh, God, I hate Marlowe.
Amsterdam, baby. Amsterdam.
Seriously, Marlowe sucks.
He's not that interesting of a character. He has one great moment in the entire 2.5 seasons he's a part of.
And it's his last one.
Yeah, it's his very last one. But more on that in 2 months. This month, season 3. So
Marlowe sucks. He's so profoundly uninteresting.
I'll talk about this on Thursday, but that line that Lester gives McNulty about you're sitting around waiting for moments that never come, it is a great line. There is some stuff that Lester says to McNulty that, while it relates specifically to McNulty's character, is something I think is universally relatable.
Yeah. And 3 has other good stuff. Again, Marlowe's terrible, but more Idris Elba's a good thing.
Oh, the stuff that last bit with Avon and Stringer, on
the roof.
Sort of lamenting the end of their friendship and knowing they're trying to kill each other is great. It's just Shakespearean great stuff. Anyway, more on that. It really
is.
More on that this Thursday. This whole month we've been going into the archives and releasing the Everyone Loves the Bad Guys Halloween specials. So far we've got Hauntings, Universal Monsters, Unseen Evil, and Death. This weekend coming up, we take a break from that, and we'll be going into the Long Road to Ruin archive for the 2-part series on The Crow. I don't remember if it was The Crow or the Terminator ones where I almost quit podcasting because you guys were picking on me.
I was not part of the Crow franchise review.
Okay, I feel like that might have been like Sean and Ben picking at me on that show. I don't mean because I thought it was Terminator, and I listened back to that. I'm like, no, this one was fine. So I think it's the Crow one, where at the end of it, I was like ready to punch someone. So that'll be this weekend. We'll see. I haven't listened to it in a while. So we'll be looking at
where poor Mark has to deal with 2 super fans of the IP.
Yeah. So we'll be looking at the first 2 Crow movies on Saturday, and we'll be re-airing the show about the last 2 Crow movies on Thursday. And then fairly big week of podcasting next week. We're doing a Long Road to Ruin that Dronny requested a year ago, which is the Of Michael Myers trilogy, which is essentially Halloween 4, 5, and 6, and H2O. So we'll be reviewing the rest of the Halloween movies we haven't reviewed yet. And then we'll be reviewing Halloween Ends on Tuesday. Alexis is doing, with you, as a matter of fact, Midnight Club on Wednesday. And that's it for that week. So that's my plugs. Wrap up your plugs really quickly. So let's get out of here.
I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. I cover AEW's Dark Elevation on Mondays. In fact, I'll be doing that once we get done here. Yay. I cover MLW when they threaten to release stuff on Thursdays. They keep saying they're coming back in fall. They've shot material. I don't know. I think they're waiting on distribution rights and whatnot. So either I actually enjoy MLW as a general rule. They're very well booked.
Alexander Hammerstone, baby.
Yeah, you and Pat, man. I don't dislike Hammer, for the record. I like him a great deal.
Look, that is it. I understand you're not like sexually attracted to men, but I think we would all agree. Alexander Hammerstone is a sexy beast.
I'm not gonna go that far.
I'm just saying.
You're allowed to say.
He's a very attractive fellow.
Depends on where his tan is at the moment.
All right.
He had a shirt that was a scale, and it was the Hogan different year scale, and he wanted to get to Hogan 80 something.
Nice. All right.
It's hilarious.
Come on.
And WWE SmackDown on Fridays. So tune in as we continue building towards sweet Saudi blood money and more Logan Paul and Roman Reigns. Don't give that a thumbs up. Don't. Just don't.
I won't be home for either Paul thing. I'll be out. I'll be seeing the Toadies at Janice Landing the night of the Jake Paul fight. And then whenever fucking Saudi blood money is, I know I won't be around. Yeah. And
I cover mixed martial arts action. This week, UFC on ESPN plus 70. It's a card. If you I'll be covering that Saturday. If you want the full preview of that, I do so on this week's episode of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, which I host. This week's episode is about 30 minutes. I am a short ask this time around. Not a lot to talk about. Don't know what else to tell you.
Sometimes it be like that.
It really does. So tune in for that. This next coming Sunday, I recorded Sunday evenings, will be a review of that episode and a preview of UFC 280, the UFC pay-per-view event, 2 title fights. Should be a good one. So full preview of that will be forthcoming.
All right, folks, thank you for joining us. We're very happy to have Sean Comer back. Apparently, he'll be back at some point to do more stuff with us. So for Robert Winfree, I'm Mark Radulich. This has been Damn You Hollywood. Be well, be safe, and behave.